All right, well, let's get started. So my name is Jessa Frost. I am the program director at a little place called North House Folk School located in Grand Marais, Minnesota. Our mission is to enrich lives and build community through the teaching of traditional Northern crafts. And certainly part of what we love to teach is how to explore the Northern landscape and the many different ways that you can get outside and be immersed in this wonderful climate. And so we have an event coming up called the Winterers Gathering that celebrates the arrival of winter in the North and all of the things and traditions that it brings with it. We'll be gathering in person on campus in just 2 weeks for those who are able to join us. But we wanted to make sure we were able to connect with our friends near and far to celebrate the arrival of winter. And so we're hosting a little webinar series to do that. So we're so delighted to kick off the first of 4 Winterers Gathering webinars this evening with Sam Demas and Laurel Bradley, who are North House students and now North House presenters who have written an awesome new guidebook and are here to tell us a little bit more about it. But before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about them. Laurel Bradley is a lifelong hiker and outdoor enthusiast. She has trekked hut to hut worldwide. She leads Sierra Club service trip, volunteer trips, and is also an accomplished backcountry cook. She's professionally trained as an art historian and serves as a curator, museum director, and teacher at several different colleges and universities. Sam Demas is a leading authority on hut systems. He has walked or skied most hut-to-hut routes in the US and all over Europe and New Zealand. His website, hut2hut.info, is a go-to resource for outdoor enthusiasts, hut operators, and land management professionals. Sam has worked as an academic librarian for many years and is passionate about conservation, environmental education, and the role of huts in providing nature immersion experiences, as well as fostering and boosting an environmentally conscious mindset among visitors. Laurel and Sam are joining us from Northfield tonight. So one quick little housekeeping note before we get started. I'm sure there will be questions. When those questions come up, you can drop them into the Q&A function, which is down at the bottom of your screen. That way we'll be able to answer them at the end of the presentation. If you have comments or want to respond to questions that Laurel and Sam might pose to you, you can do that in the chat. So I think that's enough from me. Without further ado, Laurel and Sam, thanks so much for joining us.
Good evening. Laurel, Sam, who I call the original hut nut. Thanks to Jessa and the Folk School for inviting us and for the introduction, and welcome to all of you out there in Zoom land. Even though we're not together in the same physical space, Sam and I aim for some level of interaction and participation, mostly mediated through chat and by Jessa. So let's get right to it. Chatting, that is, using the chat function. Over the next few minutes, I'd like many of you to answer the question, have you done a hut-to-hut trip? And if so, where? Okay, and we'll talk about the results of this poll very soon. Now, if we could get to the screen share and the PowerPoint. Well, here we are, our book. We're thrilled that Hut to Hut USA is finally out. The book is the fruit of 2.5 years of travel, that is hiking and skiing mostly, and lots of times writing and editing. Tonight, we're going to provide some of the highlights of the book's contents. And as a nod to participation, we're presenting a set of hut-to-hut options, hiking, skiing, and biking, so that you all can choose which appeals through a vote, which we're going to do at the end. So pay attention. Along the way, we're going to talk broadly about huts and hut journeys, and then focus in on the US opportunities and sample options. Okay, there you are, the prompt, okay? But to get to basics, what is a hut anyway? A partial list of synonyms might help us reach towards an answer. Bivouacs, bothies, cabanas, cabins, casitas, follies, hermitages, hostels, lean-tos, lodges, shacks, sheds, shanties, shelters, storage buildings, tea houses, platform tents, teepees, writers' retreats, and yurts. Since this is a book event, please indulge me as I read a brief passage from the opening pages. Ants dig tunnels, spiders weave webs, birds build nests, bears occupy dens, and humans build huts. Embodying the primitive root of architecture, huts carry symbolic resonance. They represent shelter at its most essential. Just as the primitive hut invokes the earliest stages of human civilization, huts evoke childhood. Children love to build tiny dwellings. They construct sprawling forts in the backyard or with tables and chairs in the dining room. Filled with stuffed animals or imaginary friends, these diminutive structures become spaces for social experiments. Huts are magic. It's no wonder that huts exert a magical draw on backcountry travelers. When a tiny cabin, yurt, or spacious lodge comes into view, it promises comfort and company, but also something more basic. It connects the modern traveler back to times when shelter was not taken for granted. And being inside a hut shapes and celebrates human interaction. On the left, you see a girl group enjoying the evening together. This is in Mount Tahoma in Washington State. And then on the right, much more cramped, you might say, social experiment. I took this in Iceland recently. I'm sitting on the bunk here in the foreground, and there's a young woman that I have to actually share the same mattress with while our clothes dry. It's a very cold and windy day. The story of huts has recreational infrastructure started with mountaineers in the 19th century. Climbers, mostly Brits, in Switzerland would take shelter before or after summiting in primitive shepherd's huts, as you see on the left, and walkers would soon imitate the climbers, also taking refuge on stretches of trails far above or distant from villages. By sometime in the 20th century, extensive hut systems crisscross Europe, especially in the Alps and in Switzerland, which we dub the birthplace of huts. And on the right, you see an absolutely spectacular new Monte Rosa hut, which was the result of a competition among engineering students. It incorporates all the latest in green technology and also looks like some kind of space age ice cube. And then there's New Zealand, hut capital of the world. The New Zealand Department of Conservation maintains almost 1,000 huts, and there are perhaps 100 more privately owned, ready for dedicated trampers. And now, since we suspect that the hut-to-hutters among us tonight may have sampled this great travel mode abroad, let's check the chat to see where our hut-to-hutters have been. Let's see if I can get to the chat function. I can't see it with my PowerPoint, so maybe Jessa, you can read out a few of the places and a few of the systems that our listeners have hiked hut-to-hut.
Sure, I would be happy to. Let's see here. Yosemite High Sierra huts, hoping for a Boundary Waters hut in the Dolomites in Italy. Cool. Hoping to do Yosemite, New Zealand, Kepler and Hefe tracks.
That's in New Zealand.
Laurel Highlands of Western Pennsylvania, 10th Mountain Division. Let's see, outside of Bozeman, Milford Track, Isle Royal, Appalachian Trail, Banadad, and the Black Forest in Germany.
Okay, well, that's you got both the US and New Zealand, of course, and Switzerland and Italy. Great. Well, okay. So now for those international travelers, you're going to learn a lot more about similar options in the US, whereas those who've already been know what a joy it can be.
As Laurel said, to get you thinking about planning a hut trip, we decided to frame this session as a hypothetical exercise in selecting your own hut-to-hut adventure. We'll begin with a broad stroke perspective on curating both your journey and its destinations. By this, I mean thinking about the overall arc or the feeling tone you wish to create for your trip. For me, this begins with thinking about the choices you make around the two unique features of hut-to-hut travel. First, huts make accessible to far more people the psychological and health benefits of a multi-day traverse. With huts, you don't have to be a rugged backpacker or elite athlete to travel for days on end. But you do need to select a trip appropriate to your levels of fitness and skills and to the kind of experience you are trying to create. Second, huts provide unparalleled comfort, convenience, and conviviality in the backcountry. How much and what kind of each of these dimensions do you want? We suggest beginning the process of selecting a hut-to-hut trip by thinking through how you want to live and travel on your personal pilgrimage. You have a lot of choices. First, let's think about the physical and psychological benefits of the multi-day traverse. We're interested in the two in hut-to-hut travel. Rather than staying in one hut for several days and using it as a base camp, we focus on hut systems that support walkers, bikers, or skiers traveling from one hut to another, always knowing where they will be staying at the end of the day and not having to carry the weight and take the time necessary to set up a campsite at the end of each day, and spending the entire day outdoors. To elaborate on this key facet of the hut experience, I'm going to read a few sentences from the book from a section called The Therapeutic Benefits of a Multi-Day Traverse. Hut-to-hut journeys can be transformative. Research shows that even a few hours in nature offer a balm for the spirit. In our experience, it takes 3 or 4 days to begin to feel the longer lasting therapeutic effects of a human-powered trek. Here are some of the ways that a hut-to-hut journey works on your body and soul. First, escape from the day-to-day. Travel is a time-honored method of escaping from normal routines. Hut-to-hut trips are an effective way of breaking free of the claustrophobic web of stale habits, work and family pressures, anxiety, and the ubiquitous media. Second, establishing new daily routines. While changing location may start the shift away from life as usual, the journey changes the pattern and cadence of life. The hut-to-hut traverse structures each day, imposing a meditative rhythm on essential tasks. The day is spent walking, looking, resting, and eating outdoors. At the hut, the traveler's task is simply to relax, prepare and enjoy a meal, join in conversation, enjoy music or play games with others, and then sleep. Life is reduced to a set of simple acts. Third, enjoying the benefits of sustained exercise. Moderate, sustained exercise for hours each day has a different impact than more concentrated workout routines we pursue at home and in the gym. For most people, long-distance human-powered travel is not a sport. You don't keep score. You are not training for something. You sink into the healing power of nature and enjoy the journey. Day after day of rhythmic exercise contributes to the potential for retraining neural networks and establishing new ways of being. And finally, you experience a sense of renewal. The first days are taxing. The muscles ache. Alone with your thoughts for days on end, you begin to recognize long-established ruminative patterns. Soon the body begins to grow stronger and the mind begins to clear. Historically, many great thinkers have found walking to be a powerful spur to creativity and mental clarity. Now we can all access this form of transcendence on long treks, seeing our life choices more clearly and reordering our priorities to achieve greater balance. This is a summary of the therapeutic effects of hut-to-hut travel. But specifically, where do you want to go? And what kind of terrain and in what seasons do you want to travel? How much distance can you comfortably cover? Do you want to intersperse your hut-to-hut trip with rest days? How much challenge and how much ease are you going to build into the arc of your journey? And what level of comfort and convenience do you want? The matter of cooking and cleaning up afterwards. You can either go to a full service hut and be served a delicious spread and the staff cleans up after you, or you can go much more commonly to a self-service hut with a well-equipped kitchen and prepare your own food. And as to the basics of showering and going to the bathroom, you just have to accept what's available. Very few huts have flush toilets and very few huts have showers, but thousands of them people enjoy them anyway. And what level of conviviality are you interested in having? Worldwide, renting by the bunk is the most common reservation model. You share living quarters with people you don't know. But in the US, about half of hut systems do exclusive use rentals, where you reserve all the bunks in a hut for use by the people in your party. Personally, we like by the bunk. It's a unique experience in communal living, and you end up meeting interesting people. Which model appeals to you? Sleeping quarters. On the left, one of the very few hut systems, Maine Huts and Trails, which does offer the option of having your own room. And on the right, the much more common model of sleeping in a bunk room with others. And what kind of après trekking activity do you want? On the left, we've got particularly rustic versions of a sauna and a hot tub. And in the upper right, you can have pisco sours at happy hour at Pinta del Torres in Patagonia. And you can enjoy the deck on a European hut. And finally, are you worried about the environmental impact of your travel? Rest assured, a recent recreation ecology study found conclusively that on a per capita basis, overnight stays in huts have far less environmental impact than traditional campsites, hardened campsites, and lodges.
Well, Sam has given us all a further taste of hut-to-hut, the experience, and talked about some of the variables to consider when planning a hut-to-hut journey. I'm now going to introduce our book, which embodies our research, and it comes in the form of 16 chapters with 16 featured hut systems. Here's a map, a little blurry, I apologize. And if you kind of try to hone in on the red, those are the 16 hut systems, which you see spread across mostly the northern part of the US, from Alaska to California, across the northern border from Washington to Montana, Minnesota, and Michigan to New England. But then you might notice the black dots in the black lettering. Those are 10 additional systems that didn't quite fit our criteria, either because we could not directly experience them during COVID, and that was one of our criteria, that we had to actually hike, bike, or ski the system to put it in the book, or they require specialized mountaineering skills. The US, in the US, you find a variety of architectural forms when it comes to huts. A really, really cute little cabin up in the mountains in Alaska on the left, a tent cabin, a wall tent, the Yosemite High Sierra camps, a very, elegantly designed in fact, by an architect lodge on the upper right in Maine, and then down below, yurts. There's a lot of yurts, especially for cross-country ski hut systems. This one is in Idaho. In addition, we differentiate huts by service levels. To represent the full service hut, I'm showing you the Lakes of the Clouds hut from the Appalachian Mountain Club system. And what full service means is there's a staff on duty. There are family style meals. You get bunks with bedding, that is blankets. You just bring a sheet, and so you don't have to carry a sleeping bag, and they're rented by the bunk. The self-service hut, on the other hand, represented here with some very elegant yurts, a complex of yurts really on the American Prairie Reserve in Montana, has no staff except back at the office somewhere, and provided are a cook stove, cookware and dishes, some kind of heating source, usually a wood stove, bunks with mattresses, and outhouses and other facilities. And these are rented by the bunk for exclusive use. We give a lot of tips, in fact, extensive discussion of planning and preparation. There's a whole section in the front about how to plan a hut trip, which gives tips on talking to the hut operator, how to organize your group. You pick a leader, for example, what to pack in all the various conditions and using different modes of travel, emergency planning, and more. And then in the actual featured hut systems, we give extensive information, practical information, including logistics. You probably don't want to end up hitchhiking if your hut trek begins in one place and ends 60 miles away. And so in our book, we let you know if there's a shuttle service, if there's some kind of car relocation service, or if maybe you have to use 2 cars. And then also at the beginning of each featured hut system, we try to consolidate the most important information about the hut system in what we call an info box. And this is an example, and you see you get everything right in one go: the location, the distance between the huts, the difficulty, the seasons that the hut system is open, the huts themselves, and details about those. And I think it's my turn now to begin offering you options when I'm going to turn it over to Sam. The first step in planning is choosing. So get ready for a lightning round of options. Sam's going to start with 2 ski journeys. I'm then going to offer a couple of hiking choices. Sam is then giving you a glimpse of cycling situations. And then is the time that you get to vote for your choice. Over to you, Sam.
Okay, skiing. While more than 80% of the US hut system supports skiing, for this exercise, we're highlighting 2 very popular self-service mountain hut systems located in the West: the Rendezvous huts and the 10th Mountain Division huts. Both are located largely on US Forest Service lands, like most hut systems. For both, you'll need to carry your food and sleeping bag. Both have well-equipped kitchens, and as with most ski huts, are set up for you to melt snow for your drinking water. And of course, they both provide wood and wood stoves for warmth. And here I'm going to go off script really briefly to say that although we didn't choose it for this exercise tonight, right off the Gunflint Trail in the North Country of Minnesota, there's a wonderful yurt to yurt ski system called Boundary Country Trekking. And for those of us who live anywhere near the Gunflint Trail in the north of Minnesota, we highly recommend it. But to continue with the choices, located on the eastern slope of the North Cascade Mountains outside the charming village of Winthrop, Washington, the Rendezvous huts are about a 6-hour drive from Seattle. The snow cover in this part of the Cascades is deep, powdery, and very reliable. One bonus of the Rendezvous huts is that their groomed trails are part of the Methow Valley Trail system, with 125 miles of groomed trails supporting both classic and skate skiing. This is America's largest cross-country ski trail network. So the rendezvous huts are the only hut system where you can travel on skate skis. Rendezvous offers gear haul service, and you can see on the left, they use a snow machine to haul your food and equipment if you wish to pay extra for that, if you want to travel light. Rendezvous and Meta trails are labors of love, connected and supported by some lively outdoor communities in this region, and Winthrop is a great place to spend a few days before or after your hut trip. Started in 1982, Rendezvous was the first Western ski hut system. It is family owned and operated. The 5 cozy huts are located only 1 to 5 miles apart and are rented for exclusive use and stocked with lots of games for evening fun. The itinerary mapped in the book is 21 miles over 4 days, but you can plan your own itinerary at either a novice or intermediate level. Next, the 10th Mountain Division hut system. The nation's premier ski hut system has 34 huts located on 350 miles of backcountry ski trails in the Central Rockies. The terrain is mostly rugged, high mountain trails with steep ups and downs. Most of the huts in this system are at high elevation and require some time before the traverse to acclimatize to the altitude. They also require intermediate to advanced ski skills to maintain control on the downhills and to heave yourself up the steep mountain trails. The book features one novice itinerary at 13 miles over 3 days and one intermediate, the Haute Route it's called, of 23 miles over 4 days. While there is no gear shuttle service, you can hire guides. With our Flatlander ski skills, we hired a guiding service to help us with the intermediate route. This system of 34 huts is actually an umbrella organization for multiple hut systems. I mean, I've listed them, not all of them, but most of them at the top. They share a common reservation system and cooperate in many ways. Together, these hut systems cover a vast region from Aspen in the west to Breckenridge and Leadville in the east and south. Most of the 34 huts sleep about 12 to 14 people, though there are some smaller ones, such as Ken's Cabin, an old miner's cabin that you can see on the right. They are generally about 6 to 10 miles apart, but a few are located near access roads and are on novice trails. The 10th Mountain Division staff can advise on itineraries and make reservations at all the huts in the system. A few of the huts, like those of the Shrine Mountain Inn pictured here on the left, provide splashes of color, private rooms, and showers. But most, like the 10th Mountain Division hut on the right, are much more basic, with kitchens, including everything you need for cooking and cleaning, comfortable eating in common areas, and decks with great alpine views. These are our 2 selected huts. Which one would you choose?
Hold that thought. Okay, so moving on to hiking. The 2 hut systems that you see named here are the Appalachian Mountain Club huts in New Hampshire and the Porcupine Mountains Wilderness State Park in Michigan on the UP. They're both fabulous hut systems, each featuring a generous bounty of huts. 8 in the AMC system, 15 in the wilderness section of the Porcupine Mountains. Organizationally, they're very different. The AMC is one of the oldest nonprofit outdoor organizations in the US. The first hut in the White Mountain chain dates to the late 19th century. The Michigan State Park System administers the Porky's cabins, many of which date to the later 1940s. So if you're looking for a full service hut experience in the USA, head to the White Mountains. And you see us and my sister and her husband out there at Joe Dodge Lodge. We're about to set out for an 8 hut trek, and we'll end up at the Lakes of the Clouds hut on the right on the third night. Huts, which sleep from 36 to 92, you book by the bunk, are spaced about 7 miles apart. Now, that might not sound like that much among the ambitious hikers among you. I'm from the West, so I think 7 miles and it's not even 6,000 feet. But keep in mind that New Hampshire is called the Granite State. Rocks, boulders, steep up and down slopes, and couloir define the trail. The joys of this almost 60-mile traverse, if you do all 8 huts, most people don't, they do a smaller number, are not only embodied in the scenery, the hike itself, but in the overnight community that forms at each hut. You're sharing not only a bunk room, sometimes bunks are stacked 3 high, but the common areas where a crew of mostly college student staff make and serve multi-course meals, as you see on the right, and entertain guests with educational skits, including how to tip them. Much closer to home, and I'm assuming that most of you are listening from Minnesota or nearby, is the Porcupine Mountain Wilderness State Park on Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It's a great joy to trek through magical old growth hardwood forests, preserved as wilderness by the state after decades of campaigning by locals and by such national figures as Aldo Leopold. The park interior, which you see in these slides, but I'm looking at the one in the middle in particular, is laced by rivers. You see Sam crossing a river in his bare feet, punctuated by abundant waterfalls. The trail and several cabins connect hikers with Mother Superior, our sublime Midwestern ocean. By contrast with the full-service, expansive social experience of the AMC huts, hiking hut to hut in the Porkies is more intimate and DIY. Exclusive use cabins in classic state park rustic brown style sleep between 2 and 8 and are situated 4 to 6 miles apart. Cabins on internal lakes, so I'm looking at the slide on the right here, provide guests with access to a boat or a canoe. And every hut system has its own subcultural activities. The AMC has the skits, for example. In the Porkies, it's all about gathering firewood, not only to keep yourself warm, but to supply the next party, at least for the first night. Those who fail in this duty are duly punished by means of logbook condemnations left for all to read. Okay, which do you choose? Hold that thought. You'll have time to vote very soon.
Okay, now let's look at 2 very different biking systems. Most US huts support some kind of biking, but one, the San Juan huts, pictured on the map on the left, has 2 classic gravel bike routes, one starting in Telluride and the other in Durango, Colorado, and both ending in Moab. Very different is Adirondack Hamlets to huts, specializing in end-to-end travel in the 6 million acre Adirondack Park, America's first wilderness park, which contains 101 hamlets and towns. Adirondack Hamlets to Huts doesn't have any huts. It's a community-based outfit with strong involvement from local government officials and local businesses and nonprofits. And it has a very strong economic development agenda for this rural region of New York. Adirondack Hamlets to Huts customers travel by day through one of the nation's oldest mountain ranges, the Adirondacks, and along its many lakes, and they stay in existing lodges and eat in local restaurants at the end of the day. The staff of this new outfit are experienced guides and environmental educators. They delight in mapping out bespoke trips for hikers, bikers, skiers, and paddlers, setting them up with food and lodging along the way. They try to accommodate the customer's skills and fitness levels and pocketbooks. They book their customers in lodges that range from cabins to motels to Airbnbs to taverns and pricey old great camps. Guiding and gear shuttle are available. The San Juan huts in Colorado are the nation's premier gravel bike hut-to-hut system, offering 2 epic rides of 215 miles apiece. The ride featured in the book is from Telluride to Moab, running over mountains and on stunning high mesa back roads. It's a real thrill. In addition to the gravel, it offers alternates, single track alternates of flowy trails. The route involves about 13,000 feet of elevation gain and loss and includes some really steep terrain up and downhill. This bike system operates June to September each year. And in addition, the family-operated San Juan Huts operates a separate hiking and skiing system near Telluride. The 6 16-foot by 16-foot wood frame huts on the Telluride to Moab route are spaced 27 to 37 miles apart. Huts are rented by the bunk, and you can rent the entire hut for your own party or share meals with other rugged bikers along the way, which is what we did. I'm pictured here with my brother and sister-in-law. And I'll point out that the hut in back is mounted on wheels. That was first required by the Forest Service because they had to move the huts at the end of each season. Now their permit allows them to retain the huts in situ for the whole year, but they left them on wheels so they can evacuate the structures in case of wildfire. The San Juan huts have pioneered a supply system popular in Norway, which we call self-service plus, meaning that they stock a pantry with a wide range of ingredients, including fresh fruit and veggies from their gardens. And they provide an extensive cookbook of recipes based on the ingredients in the pantry. The San Juan Huts is very popular and has influenced the development of other hut systems, a few of which have adopted the self-service plus model. A new hut system based on this model, the Aquarius Trail, opened in Utah after we finished the book. Which of these 2 hut systems would you choose and why?
Okay, well, after that lightning round of opportunities, we have a couple of different ski choices, a couple of different hiking choices, a couple of biking choices. We're now interested in what is stuck with you, which one you can't wait to plan a trip to. In fact, though, we've set up our voting system so that you can pick more than one. And so we're going to ask Jessa to take us to the ballot now. And so we're going to give you a minute or two to vote. And then I think they get tallied automatically. Oh, again, we might need some help to figure this out.
You should all be seeing a poll that would let you.
Yep, we see it and it says we cannot vote. Too bad.
Yes, you can't vote, but our participants should be able to.
And then if you're done voting and you want to add some information about why you chose what you chose, you can put that in the chat, which we'd be interested in. And then as Jessa indicated at the beginning, we are going to have a Q&A. We're very eager to answer your questions and to engage in conversation. And that, though, I think it would be better to use the Q&A function. So let the voting go on. We did.
I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question, though, while we let the votes come in. what inspired you to write this book? Have you been planning on it for years, or did it just strike you? What's the story?
Well, Sam loves to tell the story, so I guess he's going to tell it.
Well, for me, it started, I did a 6-week hut-to-hut trip in Europe, in France, Italy, and Switzerland. And I was just stunned the whole time at not only the beauty of the landscape, but the extensive hut system, literally hundreds of huts along the way. And I kept wondering, why don't we have this in the United States? Or what do we actually have in the United States by way of huts? So I came back home as a good librarian. I did a literature search, and I found out that we do have hut systems, not very many at that time in particular, and that very little is known in the United States about huts. So I filed that away, and it germinated into the idea of a book. And I managed to recruit Laurel to help me do the book. And we did it as equal partners.
And we both, and it was a retirement project, although Sam doesn't like to use that word, but I retired in 2017. And we then went on a 3-month trip to New Zealand and did many, many huts and many hut-to-hut treks. And then when we got back, the proposal that Sam had sent to Mountaineers Books about writing a Hut-to-Hut USA book came back with a yes. Perfect timing, and we started doing our research and so on.
And I'll just add that when I wooed Laurel to join me in the book project, because she would come on all the trips anyway, she's a really strong hiker and biker.
Not as much a skier, but I still came.
She said, "You don't even have a publisher." So when I went back home, I wrote the letter and we got a publisher, and then by then she was on board.
That's great. That's great. What a fun adventure to be on. So I think a lot of our results are in. Many of you noticed that I was multitasking and reversed the hiking and the biking choices, but I think many people figured it out there. Realized that biking through the Porcupine Mountains was not the plan.
Not the plan.
I apologize for confusing the matter, but hopefully most people got it. So I'm gonna, are you able to see the results there?
No, we just see the
all right, well, I'm gonna tell you the answers.
Okay,
So,
great.
in this particular group, we had 39 people elect for hiking, 10 people for biking, and 14 for skiing. Although I would point out that if you have more than one person watching at home, you only got one choice. So. Preferred ski trip by a long shot is Rendezvous.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Preferred hiking trip, I think most people figured that out, Porcupine Mountains.
One of my favorites.
What was it?
One of my favorites.
Yeah. And then the preferred biking trip, 49% the San Juan huts and 51% the Adirondack Hamlets.
Pretty evenly divided.
People are going to have to pick more than one, take more than one trip.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. One thing I think we have to admit is Sam did say that many of these systems are very popular, even though nobody knows about them except for us and a few people. And so getting reservations can be a challenge. And so we try to provide a lot of information about how much in advance you are allowed to make a reservation, if there's a lottery, and so on and so forth. If it helps you to be a member of the organization, going during the week rather than on the weekends obviously is a good idea. It's kind of extraordinary how hard it could be. I don't want to be discouraging, but especially in the ski season, the ski huts.
Sure.
Okay, so maybe we could look at the questions. I see.
Yeah, why don't you stop sharing your screen so everybody can see you a little
stop
better.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Stop share. Oh, there we
Great.
go.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of questions that have come in. Of course, great question. David, what's your favorite hut?
Oh. Is that a great question? We have to pick favorites. Oh my gosh.
You can each pick one, I suppose.
Well, one of my favorites, as I said, is the porcupines. It was a wonderful surprise to me to find something extremely rare in the United States, which is a hut system on wilderness, on designated wilderness land. It's, having a building, a structure on designated wilderness is antithetical to the spirit
In the federal
of
system.
the wild.
In the
Mhm.
federal
This is a
system.
state system, and the huts were built before it became a wilderness. And so you have an opportunity to hike from hut to hut in this fabulous old growth forest, which is an ultimate experience in forest bathing and in the flora and the fauna. The mushrooms are incredible. And of course, Mother Superior. The fishing is good in those little inland lakes. It's a gem. It's a real gem.
That's great.
So now I need to have a-
Loyalty, yeah, what's your
Here, I
favorite?
do have a favorite. Well, I can't possibly have a favorite, but the very first one we went on is very memorable to me because it was the first. That's the Three Sisters Backcountry. Is that what it's called? Out of Bend, Oregon, out of Sisters, Oregon. There's only 2 huts, and our definition of a hut system meant there had to be at least 3, but we made a few exceptions because there were a couple of really great hut systems that only had 2. And that, I think, because it was the first, we went with a group of friends. Most of them were from Northfield and had moved out to Bend. The snowpack that year, is 12 feet of powder, which was pretty intimidating for a crappy skier like me, but it was incredibly gorgeous. And the huts themselves were cozy, but just with a few decorative flourishes that made you feel just like really happy to be there at night on many levels. So that's one.
And they had guitars in the huts.
Yeah.
And they also had the self-service plus model.
Yes. So the food, you didn't have to bring the food, and they would they post the menus online. Or rather the recipes. So you knew this was like all Italian, and the next hut was all like Mexican-ish kind of stuff. And they had fresh eggs and cheese, and that they would deliver by snowmobile. So that was a special aspect of it as well. And they had beer, stacks of beer in the corner, which was pretty excellent.
That sounds pretty fun. Yeah. Another question about, can you speak a little bit about safety, especially for solo female travelers?
Well, of course, the recommendation is don't ever go alone. If you're in the snow, we're thinking of snow in particular. I think hiking is a little less dangerous. It depends in part on which system you're on. Like if you're going to the AMC huts in New Hampshire, there's a lot of people on the trail, and since they are communal huts, inevitably you'll get to know the other people in the huts, or at least some people are kind of going parallel with you. So even if you don't want to hike with them, you can sort of keep track who's ahead of you, who's behind you, and you can all look out for each other. What do you have to say about safety?
I would say just that people are very friendly, and they will look out for each other. If you make it known that you're on your own and that you're going to be going to this hut next, then people will either encourage you to walk with them, or will keep an eye out for you.
But of course, there's a lot of larger safety issues that a solo traveler should observe, just like everybody else. And one of the things that we emphasize, and that the hut managers emphasize, is make sure you have the right maps. So don't just download a map on your phone, although that's a really, really important thing to do, because just think, it's winter, your phone might freeze, and or the battery might run out, or yada, yada. So you need to have multiple navigational instruments and things to consult. We've had, and also there is several, there are cases where the signage is not good. And so you can sometimes overcome that with your map and your navigational skills, but other times you're sort of like, it is a blizzard and we have no idea where the trail is and there is no marker and it is a blizzard. And so then you choose to go back to the road and walk on the road, kind of a thing. So there are a lot of kind of contingencies you need to think through if you're going to be journeying on some of the more remote sites. But if you're, say, in the Meta Valley Rendezvous, there's a lot of people around, the distances aren't great, the terrain is moderate, you don't have to worry. So pick a system where there's people around. I guess that's one of the primary recommendations for somebody who wants to go solo.
That's great. Well, if there are other questions out there, you can drop them into the chat or Q&A. A question about if you know who to contact about the latest plans on the North Shore hut-to-hut system.
Who's that guy at the hut shack? Rory, his name is?
Rory, I think. He works at the
ski shop on
shop
the mountain.
at Lutsen Mountain. And
he seems to be a mover and shaker.
Yeah, we just talked to him once. We saw a piece in the paper
just
last Sunday.
Last Sunday, yeah.
But yeah, they seem excited about doing a backcountry hut-to-hut system as an alternative to the downhill ski expansion.
Yeah, that group is, Lutsen Recreation, which is just the first kind of ski shop you come to coming up the ski hill.
Yeah.
So great. Let's see a couple more questions coming in. What is your next destination? Where is your next destination?
Well, before we cover that, it did occur to me in response to the question about the cross-country ski idea for the Superior Highlands, that
The
hut system, one of the choicest locations in the United States for a hut system,
according to this expert,
is the Superior Hiking Trail. It would, if it could ever be pulled off, and I don't know who could do it better than folks in the North Country up there, it would rapidly become the nation's premier hiking system. That's just a little editorial comment.
Absolutely. No, that's a great,
so
great observation.
Our next outing, we bought a teardrop trailer. So we now pull our hut behind the car. And our trailers even, it takes its name from the kind of muse of Sam's website, Hut to Hut. He made up a goddess and he named her Refugia and hired an art student to draw a picture of her. She's hiking along, striding along with a backpack that looks like a hut on her back. And so we have that on the side of our portable hut.
That's great. That's
Our
fun.
next international hut trip will likely be in Greece, and we hope to get back to Iceland again soon.
Great. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I bet that'd be a really cool place to travel. Question about price range. The person notes, I'm sure it's quite wide, but give us some ideas.
The least expensive hut system in the U.S. is called Mount Tahoma Trails Association in the Cascades.
It was on Mount Rainier, basically.
And it's an all-volunteer system, which is unique. It's $15 per person per night for self-service. The huts have really nice kitchens and bunk rooms and so on. The most expensive is probably the Appalachian Mountain Club full-service huts.
And the Yosemite High Sierra camps.
Yes, right, those two. And they tend to run about $120 per person per night.
The High Sierra camps is more like 180.
Yeah, the High Sierra camps is run by a big corporation as a concession for the National Park Service. It's
Mhm.
quite expensive and really hard to get reservations.
Really hard.
But most hut systems in the US are self-service, and they're mostly around $35 a night per person.
30 to 60, I would say. Yeah.
All right, great. I did drop into chat some links
yeah,
to,
look at that.
yeah, the Lutzen folks and the article that was in the Duluth News Tribune last week, if folks are interested. So, all right. Well, perhaps the most important question to ask at a book talk: where can we get your book?
Hmm.
So we experienced the supply chain issues. It was supposed to be out in all the bookstores by October 1st, but now we actually don't know when it'll hit the bookstores, but you can get it from Mountaineers and Amazon and hopefully from your local bookstore soon, or ask for it. So they'll order lots of copies.
We
And-
certainly plan to carry it at the North Shore or the North House bookstore as well. So folks can find it through us
Sold out on Amazon.
online.
No
Yeah.
way.
Wow. Huh. Well,
Alright.
we chose Mountaineers in part because they're a really good guidebook company, but also they're a nonprofit. And so we encourage people to buy directly through them rather than go through Amazon. But it's
You
the
have to pay
same-
postage.
You have to pay postage, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any other observations out there? This was really terrific. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And it's so fun winter is such a good time to start planning, whether it's this time of year in particular, a ski trip, a bike trip, a hiking trip. It's all ahead of us now. So this is a wonderful planning time. So thank you so much for the inspiration.
Well, thank
And for
you
joining
all.
us.
Thank you
Yeah.
everybody for coming, and you did a
Yeah.
wonderful job. Jessa, thanks.
Oh, my pleasure. We will, hopefully folks can join us for our next talk, which is on Tuesday at 7:30. And it's called The Real Valkyrie. It's a writer who focuses on the history of women during the Viking era, and which is kind of an untold story. And she's got some fascinating research to share with us. So next Tuesday at 7:30 will be our next webinar, and you can read all about the rest of the whole series on our website as well, which is northhouse.org. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks especially to our members who support the school and make this type of programming possible. Thanks, Laurel. Thanks, Sam. Hope to see you on campus again
Bye.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Grew up with the AMC huts.
What?
Somebody wrote, grew up with the AMC huts.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Oh, that's right, the Q&A, that's where the questions were.